I did mess up slightly. Plan was to have a Deadhouse Gates, Deadhouse Gates review for this bad boy, and then a review for Memories of Ice. But I just went to do my I finished Memories of Ice already, and I haven't yet uploaded my Deadhouse Gates review. So we're doing 2 for 1, and then I'm gonna have this is gonna be completely spoiler free for both, and then I'm gonna have a spoiler talk for both. That'll probably be a video that comes out soon-ish. But this is going to be the spoiler-free review of both Deadhouse Gates and a used to a Memory of Light, so I automatically add the It's just Memories of Ice. I keep adding us or thes to the titles of books. I need to stop. Anyway, I was kind of mixed on Gardens of the Moon, but then really liked Deadhouse Gates, and then really liked Memories of Ice. So, unlike the first review, which was more mixed, these are both going to be pretty damn positive. Deadhouse Gates, compared to Gardens of the Moon, I basically thought was better in every way. I maybe liked the setting of Gardens of the Moon like a tiny bit more, and there were just but in terms of writing, pacing, plot, character, world building, I like Deadhouse Gates more in pretty much every way. There was less scheming in Deadhouse Gates, which is a bit unfortunate because Erickson is really damn good at writing scheming. But there was also a military stuff, and Erickson is also very good at writing military stuff, so that kind of balances out. This was also, in terms of point of view characters, this was a lot more focused than the Gardens of the Moon. Gardens of the Moon, I said, is kind of similar amount of characters in the cast, just a lot more POV hopping, and this still had quite a bit of POV hopping, but I don't have the stats, but I would guess more than 70-something% of the book was from the point of view of, I'm going to mispronounce names, I'm sorry, of Duker, Felicin, I'm not going to say the names of the people from Gardens of the Moon, but then a couple characters that were from Gardens of the Moon. I don't want to spoil that they lived, because Erickson is not nice with his characters, so in the spoiler-free sections, I'm going to try and avoid saying character names. And it had a lot less point of view hopping, which I'm fine with either way. I've read a lot of books with a lot of point of view hopping. I do think it probably did help the story more, and I thought character-wise, the big thing that made me like this book quite a bit better than Gardens of the Moon was that I was invested in the fate of pretty much all of the characters, going from none, which is a pretty good upgrade. Before I'd read Memories of Ice, but after Gardens of the Moon and Deadhouse Gate, I was basically more invested in the fates of all of the Seven City characters compared to all of the Genebacchus characters. So I think characterization-wise, it's really good. I'm sure Felicin is a pretty divisive character. I haven't done that much of going on r/Malazan, but my guess is, because I've read the book, that people are very mixed on Felicin. I wanted to punch her sometimes, but then I felt bad for wanting to punch her, and I figure someone that makes me feel that conflicted constantly is probably really well written. Duker is the point of view of a historian, which you don't see very often. And Duker was my favorite character of this book, and at the time of reading it, he was my favorite Malazan character. He was passed again after reading Memories of Ice, but I really liked Duker's entire arc and all of his point of view chapters. And then this also follows Mappo and Icarium, who are, again, an example of Steven Erickson doing a very good job of writing older characters. These ones aren't quite in their 20,000s or whatever. I don't know, they're still, but Erickson does a really good job of writing old characters, and also Mappo, I think, for the first 3 books, is probably the character with the most internal conflict. And at first, I was kind of eh. And at first, I mean like literally his first like 2 point of views. But by the end, Mappo is also a character I really liked. Um, one of the things that made this, there was one plot line in this book that I just wasn't nearly as interested in. Like when I was reading it, I was like, okay, can we get back to the chain of dogs, please? And that was from, I'm not going to say the name because he's one of the characters from Gardens of the Moon, but it's the character who goes on a boat and is trying to get to like Malaz City. That's who I'm talking about. I didn't really care that much about his character. I was kind of reading and I was like, okay, it's pretty good. Like it wasn't, I did not like it, but I was like, all right, I'm ready to get back to this other stuff now, please. So plot line wise, I think this is 3 parts. I refuse to call them books. They're not books, damn it. It's split into parts. I'm checking now as I read it because I'm good at this. Okay, so yeah, it was split into 4 parts, and I basically thought each part was better than the last. It does have a little bit of a slow start. Not a bad start. Like, it succeeded at getting me invested in the characters, but I would say it's definitely a slow start. And then there's a military campaign called the Chain of Dogs, which was just an utterly fantastic military campaign. One thing that it had, not just over Gardens of the Moon, but over most books, was a sense of tension. And there's a sentence authors use, and it's they constantly that people make fun of, and that it's like they let out a breath they didn't realize I was holding. There was a part in this book where like I finished a chapter and I was actually let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. So from now on, I can't make fun of that sentence, which makes me a bit upset. But that entire section, like the ending of that section in the book, it was really fantastic. It had me on the edge of my seat. And that's really the biggest thing that makes this book, like, I was just way more emotionally invested in this book than I was in the first one. Also, the first one, I mean, basically Deadhouse Gates is like Steven Erickson like went back in time and kind of saw my review, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'll work on that. And then in this book, he's like, yeah, you know those issues you had with Gardens of the Moon? Nah. So the other issue I had was the use of magic. I don't mind soft magic or hard magic, and Gardens of the Moon isn't like, okay, I've been scared to say the series name, because is it Malazan or Malazan? Anyway, Malazan magic, it isn't like as soft as possible, but it's in the soft end of the magic scale. And which I don't mind. If it's well done, I'm happy either way. But Gardens of the Moon, the issue is that I had with it is the use of magic that we don't really understand to solve problems, compared to in these 2 books, he uses the magic to develop the plot, not solve issues, which is its strength, in my opinion. So I would say in terms of use of magic, this book isn't as magic heavy as 1 or 3. But in both, kind of magic is used to develop the plot and build tension instead of used to resolve tension, which a lot of time when you don't understand how the magic works can just be unsatisfying. So my overall, I gave this an 8.4 out of 10. It's just a very overall solid book. Maybe 1.5 plot lines that at times were iffy. But I think like going into, I'm going to switch between Malazan and Malazan every time, so to make everyone upset, just to guarantee everyone's unhappy with me. Going into Malazan, my plan was to read books 1 and 2 pretty much no matter what I thought of book 1, because I'd heard it was one of the weakest, and I think that's probably a good strategy, and maybe even 1, 2, and 3. They're kind of big books to ask to do that, and I guess if you read Gardens of the Moon and you're just like, this is the worst thing I've ever read, I hate everything about this, and I think it depends why you don't like it, but I would give it at least book 2, because I think book 2 is a pretty clear step up in quality. And that moves me to my thoughts onto The Memories of Ice by Steven Erickson. Still spoiler free. This is the point of these videos. I'm trying to make these for people who are wondering what the first time experience is like if you haven't read Malazan. So I'm not going to spoil Gardens of the Moon or Deadhouse Gates or Memories of Ice. This book kicks ass. Like, holy damn, this was a good book. It's kind of like it has the great military stuff and the amazing scheming, and takes the characters I was interested in and makes me like, it took all the characters who I didn't care about as much as the characters in book 2, and it's like, yeah, you care about them more now, and I find them more interesting. So I think I will say one name. I think Quick Ben at this point is my favorite Malazan character. And it's like this kind of, even though this was really the characters, like I was invested in them, it didn't quite achieve, like, I want to know what's going on with that character more now. Which is one reason this took me a long time to read, which was also partially just because I was busy, but this was, I think, the longest book. I read this in like double the time I read this, which I didn't read this slowly because of quality, but one reason I read this really fast was because of quality, and that, like, I wanted to get back to the characters that I really liked. Basically, take all the characters that were alive at the end of Gardens of the Moon, and they're just more interesting, and you'll probably care about them more in this book. And for both of these books, the world building is just pretty insane. I know someone in the comment section, I forget who you are, but I'm sure if you see this, you'll know who I mean, says that Malazan world building, it's like, it's not like the world increases by like 20% each book. It like increases exponentially. And yeah, like, you know, when you get to the prologue and it's 319 years in the past, and then it's like, oh, that's only half the prologue, also one that's like 119,000 years in the past, it's like, okay, that's a long time ago, and not just bigger, the world, it's like, in every respect, is getting way more fleshed out, but also, it's not like, it's never done, I didn't never find that it was done unnaturally. It was never like, you know, as you know, the way the deck of dragons works, it's like, no, you are figuring out the world as characters figure out the world, and there's a lot of elements of mystery to the world because, you know, the gods and the ascendants and the godlike figures don't go around telling everyone all these details. So as the characters you're following figure it out, you do too. There was one plot line in this I was less interested in than the other, and it was kind of around the maybe not for the second half, but like for the first half, the caravan guards. I was kind of like, you know, I was a bit iffy on the caravan guards, and it was like, okay, this is fine, but it's like, can I have more Quick Ben chapters, please? Thank you. I'm a big fan of Quick Ben. Give me more. Just an entire, no, don't give me an entire. I'd read an entire book from the point of view of Quick Ben. And there was one kind of trope. This is really one of my few minor complaints for Memory of Ice. And there was one character who a lot of his sudden development was based on a more minor female character getting sexually assaulted, which I find that a pretty lazy way to like lead to character development. And so that character's arc was probably my least favorite in this book, but he also, by no means, were the caravan guards like the most important part of their books. They were kind of the B or the C plot. You're mainly following, you know, the bridge burners and the gray swords are the main parts of this. Then I guess the C plot is like with Lady Envy, which I really liked. That's really one of my, I don't really have what else as con, and I thought it was pretty damn fantastic in every way. So, Memories of Ice gets from me a 9.3 out of 10. Damn fantastic book. I imagine, like, if you read Gardens of the Moon and that's already like a 9 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 book for you, it's hard for me to imagine this won't contend for like your favorite books. Yeah, it's really, really good. And the last, it's kind of like, I'm a big fan of my big endings. Um, and this held my interest throughout, and then also had the big endings. Um, had the combination of like maintained great tension, had great military stuff, fantastic scheming. Um, I will. I don't think I'm not a fan of the Erickson romances. But it's a pretty small part of the story. I don't doesn't bother me that much. But I'm not a big fan of the Erickson romances, but I can live with that. So I would also just these were less confusing than Gardens of the Moon. Like there are times when you're confused, but remember like Gardens of the Moon, I said parts of it felt like he was being deliberately obtuse with like the way he was writing things. Um these things were just confusing because of how crazy the world is, and that's at times they were both. I knew what was going on way more. Um, he does have a thing. He does. I didn't notice it in Memories of Ice, but I did notice it in Deadhouse Gates, but only with one character compared to Gardens of the Moon, where it was more characters, and that's where a character starts thinking things in the head and misses an important detail about like a magic thing. But in this character, only Felicien did it, and yeah, Felicien would absolutely do that. So I can't even. I'm not mad about that. He also abandoned the thing where he switches point of view mid paragraph. I think he did it once in Deadhouse Gates. He relapsed on like 90% of the way in the book and had one paragraph where it was just like, zip, I'm not going to have a paragraph break. I'm glad he stopped that. I was not a fan of that from Gardens of the Moon. So, if you liked Gardens of the Moon, I can't imagine you not liking these two books. And if you didn't like Gardens of the Moon, I still think you'll probably like these books. That concludes my spoiler-free thoughts. There will be a spoiler talk for the Malazan people, and this will be my last spoiler-free Malazan video until I'm done, and then I'll probably have an entire series review. I think at this point, like, I'm already not mentioning character names in Memories of Ice, and I think at this point, like, for 3 books I can get away with it. After this, I'll be starting this bad boy. It will just be all spoilers because it's just a pain to do a review of like book 5 of a series completely spoiler free. So that's all I got for you guys. Malazan fans, let me know where in the series do you rank these 2 books. From what I've heard, what I'm kind of expecting is Gardens of the Moon is the low end of Malazan. This is kind of middle of the pack, and this is high end of Malazan, which I'm damn okay with this being the high end of Malazan because this was a damn good book. Bye, everybody.